and welcome back for another video. This video is going to be a pretty delayed December reading wrap-up. I ended up being pretty busy around the holiday season, so I'm just now getting to it, but I still wanted to make sure I did this video. So let's get right into it. So overall, this past month of December, I read a total of 9 books. And I again did a little bit of a summary of the genres of books that I read over the month of December. So I ended up reading 2 fantasy books, 2 romance books, 3 general fiction, and then 2 thrillers. And in total, so I actually have 4 of the books that I read this month here with me. So I actually ended up reading 4 physical copies of books, and then I listened to 5 audiobooks this month to make up my total of 9 books. That's definitely not what the normal ratio is. I usually have primarily physical copies of books that I've read with a supplementation of a couple audiobooks. For some reason in December I got really into audiobooks even more than normal. I think it was partially because I also got very into puzzles over November and December, so I spent a lot of time that I wanted to read but I also wanted to do a puzzle, so I just listened to my audiobook as I puzzled. Yeah, and that was very enjoyable. And also just with holiday travel, I thought I would end up with more time to read at the end of the year, but then I ended up just spending time with friends and family, and so that was very fun as well. So let me go ahead and get into my reviews. So the first book that I read in the month of December, I believe, was Wrong Place, Wrong Time. And this one is a thriller. It's about this woman who, I think it's Halloween, and she looks out the back window and she sees her her son murder someone. And she runs out there to try and stop what's happening, and the man ends up dying, and the man that her son killed ends up dying, and her son is going to prison. And then it's kind of one of those Groundhog Day type books, except she's going back in time. So I think she starts out waking up that same day all over again, and then she's slowly going farther and farther back in time before her son killed this man. And she's trying to learn, why did her son, who she thought was this, innocent boy, kill this man? Can she unearth a way to stop it from happening in the future? Overall, this book was really good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I usually am not a big fan of the Groundhog Day type trope. Obviously, this was a little bit of a spin on that. But I did enjoy it. I felt like they kept you pretty interested since you were going back in time and not just repeating the same day. There were new things happening constantly throughout the book, and you were pretty interested in figuring out what could have happened, and there were some pretty big twists that I didn't necessarily see coming that really kept me very interested in the book. So yeah, 4-star book. I overall would recommend. It's definitely not a scary thriller type book. It's more just a thrilling kind of crime solving type of novel. And then the next book that I read in the month of December was The Assassin's Blade. So this is the first book, I guess, in the Throne of Glass series. So this is the prequel to Throne of Glass. So people usually either start with reading Throne of Glass first, or they start reading the prequel. I started reading the actual book Throne of Glass first because I didn't really know much about the series. I just heard people recommend the Throne of Glass series in general, so I just looked up Throne of Glass, reserved it from the library, and read it. And I didn't really know about all of the debate that there is about the reading order. So I think you either read the prequel first, or you read the prequel after the first 2 books or after the first 3 books. I feel like I've heard people say either way. For me, I read Throne of Glass, and then I read Crown of Midnight, which is the second book, and then I read the prequel. Like I said, just because I didn't know that the prequel existed. And just very quick recap, I've talked about this in a couple videos now, but Throne of Glass series, basically in the first Throne of Glass book I read, there's a number of people competing to become the king's assassin, and the main character we're following, Selena Sardathian, is an assassin, and so she's competing to become the king's assassin and eventually earn her freedom because she's originally enslaved. So this just gives you a little bit of background about why she was enslaved, everything that happened before that first book, obviously. And I think I feel like the consensus overall has been you should be reading this book first because you're just more connected to the character once you actually get to Throne of Glass, because this gives you so much information about her and her life before and makes her a much more like relatable, I don't know if relatable is the right word, but like you're much more sympathetic towards her because you know all the hardships that she went through in this book. I would say I can see how that could be true. I also really enjoyed reading it third. I felt like it made it even more interesting to me because there were things that were happening in this book that seemed like little details, but I was like, oh yeah, that's why this happens later on, or that's what they're referencing later. Whereas if you read this first, I could see some parts getting a little bit slow because it's just a whole bunch of short stories or novellas to set things up for the rest of the book. So I could see either way, but highly, highly, highly recommend the Throne of Glass series. I think I ended up giving this one, 4.5 stars. So far, I think all of the Throne of Glass books for me have been 4 stars plus, and I have really, really been loving them. And then the next book that I read in December was The School for Good Mothers. This is a book that I kind of randomly picked out from a library book sale. I think it was just there for like 50 cents or $1. I'd seen it places, and so I was just like, sure, I'll pick it up and read it. This is one of those scenarios where that did not really pay off. I was hoping it would like surprise me and be enjoyable, but that was not the case. A little bit of background. This is about this woman named Frida, and she is a single mom. She leaves her kid for a couple hours because she's just so overwhelmed. I think her kid's like maybe 1 or 2. She's just so overwhelmed by motherhood, and so she just gets up and leaves for a couple hours, comes back. Obviously, you should not do that with a 1 or 2-year-old. You can't just leave them alone. But it's kind of like this dystopian world where Child Protective Services is like insane. And so she is immediately like arrested and then sent to this school where they teach them to become good mothers. But it's kind of a crazy school where it's like, this is the only way to do things. If your kid is crying, you give them a 4-second hug, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then they will be happy. And yeah, this one was a rough read. I did not enjoy it. I ended up listening to the audiobook for a lot of it because I was just trying to get through it because I was kind of interested to see what happened at the end, to see like where this was even going. But I would definitely not recommend this book. It was just so weird. Like I said, it's a dystopian world, but the only dystopian thing was like the CPS being crazy. Everything else in this world is normal, so you're just like, why in the world would this be happening, number one? Also, I feel like the author must have had some like bad interaction with CPS or something, and then is kind of just like crazily writing this book of how they're gonna like take over the world and like this is what's gonna happen if we keep letting CPS do this. I don't know, it seemed like weird, very weird. Yeah, I would not recommend. I think I ended up giving this one 2 stars and maybe even say 1.5. I got through it, but I did not enjoy it. There were dolls in this book that looked like human children that they were taking care of, and they had to put like coolant fluid in them. Very weird. Yeah, don't recommend. The next book I read after that was an audiobook that I listened to, which was Talking at Night. This one I really enjoyed. It was, number one, very relaxing to listen to as an audiobook because of just like the audiobook reader and like just the way it was narrated. So it was covering, there's this boy and this girl that met in high school, I believe, and they'd kind of like both had crushes on each other, maybe like a hint of a relationship, but then they'd kind of gone their separate ways. But then throughout the book, it covers like a pretty long span of time. They keep coming back into each other's lives, kind of being tempted by this relationship they want to have, but it's always kind of like right person, wrong time type situation where it's never quite working out. And I really did enjoy it. I think it was very similar to, what's the author? Sally Rooney. It was very similar to Sally Rooney's books where like there's not a clear like rising action, climax, resolution. It was kind of just like multiple things were happening throughout the book. It wasn't an exciting read, but it was just like an enjoyable, relaxed, kind of like real world relationship type read where it's not just like all sunflowers and butterflies and you get together and everything works out perfectly and then there's an issue, but like just yeah, I think it was very realistic and very, very well written, very beautifully written. I could see this being a book if you're someone that annotates books. If you read the physical copy of the book, that there could be a ton of things you'd want to highlight. This is almost a book I would like to reread as a physical copy of the book, to just be able to like slow down through it and really enjoy some of the writing in the book. If you're someone that wants more action in your book, definitely don't read this, but if you just like some beautiful writing, I would highly recommend. Okay, and then the next book that I read, this is one I listened to, and that is Lovelight Farms. I listened to this because I was like, I feel like I should be reading some type of Christmassy book in December just to get myself in the Christmas mood. And so I kind of just like looked up Christmas books and what was like currently available in like from my library, I think. I don't remember if I did this on Spotify or in my library, but either way, it was one that was just like available now, and I'd heard people reading it, and so I gave it a try. I gave it 1.5 stars. As you can picture with any Christmas romance, it's this woman, she lives on a Christmas tree farm. She has this friend that she has to fake a relationship with because she's entered herself in to win this contest, and in the contest she said that she like owns the Christmas tree farm with her boyfriend, and now she's a finalist in the competition, so she has to like fake that she has a boyfriend, so when the judge comes and visits she doesn't think she lied in her application. So like fake dating, which I'm overall just like not usually a fan of, because I've never seen a convincing reason of why two people would need to fake date, especially for the like depth and length of which they usually do it. And yeah, it just wasn't, wouldn't really recommend. I think there's way better cheesy Christmas romance books out there if that's what you want than what this one is. I just didn't buy the relationship. They were friends and fake dating, and then they obviously were starting to fall in love, but it wasn't clear like if you were friends for so long, why did this never happen before? I don't know. I was not a big fan. Try out a different Christmas romance next year if you're looking for one. Okay, and then the next book that I read was the fourth book in the Throne of Glass series, Heir of Fire. This one I ended up giving 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Again, I can't really go into exactly what happened in this book because it's like the fourth book in a series, so obviously I'd be giving spoilers if I really got into this one. All I will say is the first 3 books, magic is outlawed, so they are, well, really still in this book, magic is outlawed, but as the series starts out, magic is outlawed. So there's not really many magical elements that are present within the books, which I feel like makes it pretty easy to understand all of the different characters. You get a hold on everything that's happening without adding magic in. This one, we start to see a little magic, and we start to cover a few more characters than we ever did before, so it definitely got a bit more complicated. I had to read this one a bit slower and reread some things to just make sure I understood what all was happening in the magic world. And I haven't yet started the book after this one, but I want to start it very soon because I don't want to forget everything that I learned and understood in this book. But yeah, as I've said multiple times, really recommend the Throne of Glass series if you're trying to get into a fantasy series for the first time, because I have really, really been loving it, and usually I'm kind of a fantasy skeptic / maybe hater, but this series has been amazing. After that, I listened to another audiobook. And that audiobook I listened to was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I don't know why I keep listening or reading Riley Sager books, because my consensus is I think that it's just not my favorite type of a book. He's just not my favorite author. But I read House Across the Lake, strongly disliked that because of a plot twist that I cannot say because it gives away the whole plot of the book, but also I think is a horrible plot twist that should not be legal. And then I think I read another book, yeah, the only one left. I liked that one better. So I tried out Lock Every Door. This one is about this girl who, she sees a job listing to basically just like go live in this apartment complex. She's very confused about why they would want her to just like get paid to live in an apartment. But what they tell her is that it's a very like nice, well-known, prominent apartment complex, and people that live there pay a ton to live there. And so just for like safety reasons of apartments not looking empty, as well as just like they don't want all of these rich people to feel like they live in some like abandoned apartment complex. They want to keep people in all the apartments, so if someone, let's say, has to like move out for 6 months or something, they want someone to come live in that apartment to like fill the spot and keep up the appearances. So this girl thinks that's really weird, but okay, she needs money and they're giving her like a ton of money to do this. So even though it seems a little sketchy, she decides to move in. But while she's living there, she's slowly starting to unearth how things seem a little bit sketchier and sketchier while she's living there. And she thinks that she might have been told some lies about why she's living there. Things seem a little bit weird. Yeah, so thriller, if I didn't already mention that. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I feel like it was just like averagely entertaining, but not like I won't remember it later, probably. Quick, easy read or listen, and it was fine. Nothing crazy to say. I wouldn't say it was a bad book, but I also wouldn't like go out of my way to recommend it for someone. Okay, then after listening to Lock Every Door, I listened to The 7-Year Slip. This is a book that I have seen everywhere over like Book Talk, BookTube, everything. People recommending and loving this book. So if you haven't already heard of it, it's a romance that kind of has a magical element. So this woman inherits her aunt's apartment, and so she starts to live there, and basically throughout the book she finds that sometimes when she goes into the apartment, it has slipped back in time 7 years, and 7 years ago there's this guy living in the apartment that's like subletting it from her aunt, and so she's kind of getting to know this guy. At first, obviously, she's like, why in the world is this man in my apartment? And then they're starting to become friends and more. And then at the same time, you're learning some more about just like her own life and her own kind of like work struggles that she's dealing with and trying to figure out what she wants to do with herself in the future. So I would say, like, even though it's a romance, it's a more like, it's kind of general fiction, but with a very strong romance element. It's not completely focused on the romance the entirety of the book, even though it kind of like all relates to the romance. I give this one 3.5 stars. I was kind of disappointed after I'd seen such raving reviews, but I guess I should know that usually when I see high reviews on a romance and then I read the romance, I just never like it as much. I always think that like a lot of the things are kind of dumb that happen in the book. This one I wouldn't necessarily say that's true. I felt like I overall did kind of like the romance. I wasn't like, I didn't have super strong feelings about them being together and really caring, but I thought that they seemed sweet together. I could see why they were getting together. My main issue was that I feel like there were a lot of plot holes related to this whole time travel thing that were not addressed just because it was supposed to be just like a little general fiction romance cute book. But I just had questions, and I don't even feel like I was being like overly critical. Like there were just basic things that I was like, wait, how does that work? And you kind of had to read the book to know what I'm talking about, but I don't know, I had some questions about how this really all was working out. Yeah. But overall, I enjoyed it. If you're someone that really likes romances, then you probably would enjoy it because that's what the romance community seems to have decided. But I'm just always very highly critical of romance books, so it wasn't my favorite. Okay, and then the next and final book that I read in the month of December was Demon Copperhead. This is a book that was recommended to me by so many people, and I listened to their recommendation. I reserved it from the library months and months ago, and I think I was number like 1,000 something on the list, so I'd been waiting for this book for so long, and then it finally came in, and I was able to finish off the year of 2023 reading this book, which was really amazing because it also ended up being, if you haven't already watched my last video, or I might end up posting it next, I'm not sure what order these are going to go up in, it ended up being my number 2 read of 2023, like my second favorite book of the entire year was the last book that I read, so I feel like that was pretty exciting. It follows a boy who grows up in rural Virginia in this very small town where nobody's really like leaving the town and going to college or leaving the town and getting a good job. Everyone kind of stays in the town, becomes a drug addict, or works some general blue-collar job and is probably also a drug addict, and no one's really going anywhere. And so the main character, Demon, he kind of assumes he'll have a similar life, and then a lot of hard life struggles are thrown his way, and he's just kind of trying to survive, and you're following his life for probably the first like 30 or so years, and how he's trying to just make it through living in these rough situations. And it was really sad at a lot of points, but also uplifting at others, and overall just super, super enjoyable. I can't recommend this book enough. I give it 5 stars, obviously, since I'm raving about it. But yeah, very, very great way to end off my December as well as my entire year of 2023. So yeah, that's all of the 9 books that I read in December. I had a lot of really good reads, especially with the Throne of Glass series and the book I just talked about, Demon Copperhead, as well as a couple more disappointing books. But yeah, overall a very good reading month, and I am very excited for the books to come in January, as well as just the year of 2024 in general. Yeah, so I'll end this video here, and I'll hopefully see you very soon in my next video.